All right, so Mr. Capusta, take it away, and I will
Sure.
tag team when we get to our church side.
I think most of you know me. My name is Rob Capusta. I've been on the day school board a short period of time. But I am also the chair of the joint committee of the church and the school that met to put together this plan. And I think we've got a great plan here. The school has been part of the church, a ministry of the church, for almost 50 years now. I think it's been a great ministry for the church. It's been great for the school. It's been a win-win situation. And I think this plan will continue that. So let me just kind of go over kind of what the agenda is. I'm going to go over the purpose and the need, some conceptual drawings, kind of the benefits of it, kind of campus security is a big issue right now, how we're going to fund this, kind of there'll be shared use options, youth space options, potential LCC things that the church can do if they want to, and kind of the timeline and when the congregation vote is. So that's the agenda for this evening. It'll only take 3 hours, don't worry, kids, it'll be a lot of fun. Anyways, kind of why are we doing this? What do we need? Why do we need to do this? Well, again, as I said last Sunday, Steve Cropper and the operations team has done a great job, and they've band-aided it for many years. It's time for major surgery. Band-aids won't do the trick anymore. We've got aging structure, we've got air conditioning systems that are on their last legs. I'm amazed they've lasted this long. Just take a look at the roof. The roofs need to be replaced. You look throughout the campus, you can point to anything that needs upgrading, refurbishing. So it's an opportunity to do that. The other big thing is, and the day school engaged the services of CIS, which is a top-notch firm that specializes in kind of studying buildings and schools and how to make them more secure. And a lot of their recommendations are incorporated into this plan. The preschool right now and the church in general right now, they've got 50 different entry points. I'm exaggerating, but by not that much. So that's another issue that we examined in looking at this. The other thing is, from a preschool perspective, the school and the classrooms, we have lost students because people look at the classrooms and say, I'm not sending my preschooler here. And I have that directly from 2 or 3 different people, and other board members on the day school have heard that also. And everyone says you have a great program, but they get turned off, and when you're in preschool and people are hypersensitive, they're sending their kids off for the first time, and little things make a huge difference to them. The other thing from a long-term perspective is that's our feeder to the campus, to the elementary and middle school campus. So if that gets cut off, that's going to greatly impact the elementary, middle school campus. Let's see, what did I miss? Let's see. Yeah, the other thing that is provided is technically, it's only because we're grandfathered in, but the codes really prohibit preschool from being on the 2nd floor. And we've got classrooms on the 2nd floor of the education building, and really we're the only reason we can do that is because we're grandfathered. So we would much rather have the kids all on the ground level than up on the 2nd floor. The other thing to realize is we spent some time looking at the best option is to rebuild everything, to elevate the buildings, to avoid the flood issues. If Pastor Will had gotten Bill Gates to join our firm and we had $5 million, we could do that. But we weren't able to do that, so it's just cost prohibitive at this point in time. So, next slide. This is our current footprint, and primarily we're looking at the youth center, the Braid building, the education building, but also keep in mind, I'll be referring to this later, the choir room right here, because that's becoming an option for the youth space, and I'll be talking about that a little bit further later. Okay, this is the first concept and this is the original concept of kind of how we would reconfigure the campus. We would have The youth building is here, the education, grade building, courtyard. We'd be putting in gates, and I'll be talking about security in depth later. So we'd be putting gates there. We put a vehicular gate here and here. We'd be converting these 7 spaces there that are parking spaces into a courtyard, pretty much for the youth. And then they would have the existing playground as is. And again, these gates there are to cut off access and for security purposes. They'd be able to be opened and to be closed, so on Sundays it could be opened, or other needs arise, we can open it. Next slide. This would be the classroom layout and youth center layout for this. Again, the youth center would be converted into 3 2-year-old classes and 2 4-year-old classes. The grade building would have 3 3-year-old classes. Again, the first floor of the education building, we'd have a couple of 4-year-olds and the 4 5-year-old classes in there. The second floor then would be the youth center. And that space would about equal the space that they're occupying in the youth center. And then this right here, it's not labeled, but kind of the foyer, that's going to become the preschool office. So, this is concept 2, and kind of the basic campus layout here is the same as I just described. But the main difference is right here, which was the choir room and the kind of the foyer, the office before the choir room, that would become the youth center. Smaller space, but there's a number of reasons that might make a lot more sense. We would then convert this to being kind of the youth courtyard, so that would be geared for the youth, for their use on it. We would maintain this courtyard and kind of play court and kind of expand the playground over there, and we would need to maintain that again for security purposes to prevent access to it. So really the difference is, and then the second floor of the education building would be used for the preschool. And this is, again, is the floor plan. Again, this, we've labeled that multi-purpose on the second floor there for the preschool. Literally, this idea on the choir room came up 2 weeks ago, maybe less than that. But right now, we have not given a lot of thought to what we would do with regard to the second floor. One thing we would probably use it for is, because the choir room is used for some music education for our students, we'd probably use some of that for music. We may keep a classroom up there. For financing purposes, we're going to need more income, and maybe we can generate more income from it. We really don't know. Anything is on the table right now. So we're looking at all those options from the preschool perspective. So, okay, what are the benefits to this program, to this rejuvenation? Well, you'll then have a church campus that's basically completely rejuvenated, at least a good portion of it. And I think that can be used to bring new members to the church. I think it's another win-win for the school and the church. The other thing is, it's going to be paid by the day school, basically. So the church isn't having to contribute the vast majority of the funds to do this refurbishment. And also will result in a youth center that you can design, have what you want in the youth center. Again, another dedicated youth center designed for the youth. And lastly, and most importantly, and we have lost students because our campus is not secure. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, people are very concerned about security. So putting these gates in and having a more secure campus, we'd be able to monitor it. And I didn't point it out earlier, but that office space, that will be the one entrance into the preschool, so we can monitor who's coming and who's going. So that's my lead into campus security. Again, as I mentioned before, the preschool gates, all of those gates are designed for security. We are going to have gates along the back alley, as I call it, and again, those will be able to be opened and closed to prevent access to it. Now, having said that, we'll have gates to the expanded playground. We will probably put a sidewalk or something in that gate. Will there be another gate there? Go to the next slide, it's easier on that one.
Sure.
So, We'll have this gate here that can open and shut, some type of access. There's a door here to the kitchen that they need for deliveries. So we've taken that into account, so there'll be some type of a path or way to get whatever they need for deliveries. Again, these two vehicular gates, we'll close those, and there was questions on Sunday about if some function was going on during the day, we can definitely open it up if necessary. We'll be able to control those. Again, these pedestrian gates are right here and here, and again, the reason that one's there is, again, this has so many access points. Somebody could come through Fellowship Hall, exit, and then they're in the campus. They could enter here, go through here, and exit here. We have to block that off. So that's why that gate is there. Again, we've got these pedestrian gates. We'll have the office right there. All of that is designed to more secure the campus. Now, you can't make it 100% foolproof. And so the goal is, as a security firm said, the slope a person down, just to make it more difficult to access. You're not going to be able to prevent somebody from accessing the campus if they're determined to do that. But if you can slow them down, and what we're talking about doing is putting in like a, what do we call that? The
Panic button?
Yeah, the panic button. We can.
Boy, you read his mind.
You
That's
know?
scary.
We can press a panic button that calls the police, and they'll be out here much more quickly than if we don't know it. Every second makes a huge difference. The quicker we can notify them, the better it is, and that's kind of the goal of this plan. You know, we can't put up steel gates and have a pass to go through. That just doesn't work. So that's kind of the goal of this plan here. Okay, how's this going to be paid for? Checkbooks, anybody? We estimate the cost to be $1.3 million. I do want to say up front, I am only 60 to 70% confident that we're going to be able to swing the funding on this from the school's perspective. That's a huge debt obligation for the school to be coming on, to be paying. Some of the challenges with it are, one, we're just estimating what the interest rates will be. They just raised them today, so what will they be when we have to take this loan now? Two, how much will we have to take a loan for? We're estimating 1.2 million, and you know, is that the right number? Could it be higher or could it be lower? We don't know. There's a lot of variables in this. Three, what's the amortization schedule? I won't get into that because that has an impact on the amount of payments. One thing the bank will likely require for financing is they will not require a mortgage on the church grounds. So there'll be no mortgage. The church will remain free and clear. They will require an additional mortgage on the school campus. One of the issues we have is, do we have enough equity in the school campus that the bank will be comfortable in securing this additional $1.3 million in debt with the school campus? I'm semi-confident we can get there, but that's another issue that we will have to address. Again, the lease that we're talking about, probably for 30 years, the bank will want to say, okay, if something happens, we want to know you're there for at least 30 years. From a banking perspective, we're going to have income from the preschool, and if suddenly we're cut off from income because we don't have a lease, it makes the underwriters at the bank very nervous. And they don't care that we're a school or a mission, and that would never happen. They don't believe that, so we have to, you know, dot our I's and cross our T's. And then kind of there's still some terms that will need to be worked out. We'll have a joint task force put together, come up with the exact terms of the lease. Again, the goal is for the school to basically take over the majority of the expenses that are associated with those three buildings. Presently, the school is paying anywhere from $45,000 to $50,000 a year to help reimburse the church for those expenses. I would anticipate that will be greatly reduced, offset by the fact that the school will be paying those expenses directly. That's kind of the anticipated plan. Let's see. I think I've covered everything there. Next slide. Okay. The refurbishment project is going to have resulted in kind of updated preschool rooms. The church, there'll be new AC units, new roof, again, whole new refurbished campus. We've told the architects to the extent possible, we'd like the exterior of the buildings to tie in and to kind of coordinate with the school buildings across the street, so it looks like one large campus, and that they work together, that one of the challenges that we have as a church and the schools, we have two different campuses, and we're trying to unite and make it as one campus completely. Then we're going to be putting together, another agreement we'll put together is, the preschool doesn't want to say, you guys can't use the preschool building. We need to put together an agreement, because if we're not using it, certainly going to be open to the church to use whatever they may need to use it for. Again, annual costs, we need to come up, that'll go with the net lease. And the other issue that during construction, there's obviously going to be some impact to the programming that's ongoing at the church campus right now. We've got a whole list of what that is, and we've got some ideas on how to address it. Basically, most of that would probably be addressed either in Fellowship Hall or on different school buildings across the street. So that's how we would address those needs. Okay, we've got kind of two options for the updated youth center which are being considered. And again, as I alluded to earlier, it's either the second floor of the grade building or the choir room. And from the school's perspective, we're happy with either. Whatever the church feels is better for the church, it'll work for us. Kind of what the school would be paying for in connection with that, again, in each case, is we'd be building out a plain vanilla type of space, whether it's on the second floor or in the choir room. We'd be paying for kind of the demolition and just putting in a plain vanilla space. The church and church council are looking at the pros and cons. I know that they've had a lot of input from people, and the choir room can make a lot of sense because it's centered on the campus. There's the nursery, there's a lot of youth programming right there already, close to the sanctuary, so there's a lot of options with that. Trade-off is it's not quite as large, but that's something for church council to work through and the church membership to work through. Did I miss anything? We'll get to the next.
Yeah, it's easier to describe, I think, when we see it. So option one, again, that's the second story, about 1,500 square feet, which is similar to what the youth are currently in, minus the entryway area. This concept, would use a courtyard that's just outside that second-story building where those 7 parking spaces are right now.
And option two, again, is the youth room, and they're talking about putting a door to enter into Fellowship Hall. We'd put the youth courtyard right there, and so that's the second option, which again is tied close to the sanctuary. And the trade-off is it's not quite as large, but I'd say better located.
And we have a previously approved project to take the library that's just across from the music room and convert that into a nursery. So we would have, as someone comes in from that entryway, the youth space is right there, the younger kiddos that are in the nursery, and then the youth programming there.
And these are kind of what the church can do if they want to. Again, there's going to be construction going on, and the church can potentially, this is dealing with the inside of the youth center. Again, the church would be kind of whatever finishes they want, whatever furniture, whatever equipment they want in there, that's what the church would be funding. Part of the project also is because that was the music director's office, we're going to be building out another music director's office, which would be in the cry room, I think is what they're talking about now.
So yeah, there's some potential options. These are not set in stone, and again, we want your input on this. One of them would be to move the music director's office to the cry room. The cry room would then, that space is utilized to change babies, nursing mothers, that kind of thing. Those spaces could be in other rooms. We could have certainly a changing table in the nursery, one of those wall-mounted ones in the restrooms, a space to nurse. We could think about how we'd use dual space for the prayer chapel that's outside the sanctuary. If we had, a little bit of modification there, do not disturb sign or something. So that could be done. But again, these are all options that we're weighing, and council will meet and choose one. with your input.
Next slide. Timeline. Okay, the conceptual design stage has been completed, and we're working on the schematic design stage next, and then design, development, and then construction documents. One of the reasons we need to have this approval now is because, and this is kind of a broad concept, we've got it pretty well developed, but we don't have everything fully thought out or thought through. That's gonna take spending $109,000 with the architects to come up with the final plans and specs. And before the school was willing to spend $109,000, we wanted to get the assurance that the church would approve this project. Because if it's not approved, then there's no sense in us spending that money to do all of these additional drawings and work. Our proposal is, and again, we need to, again, another thing that's impacting the timeline is we need to submit the drawings, permittable drawings, to the city by January. And we want to start at the end of April to do this project. One of the challenges is the city is very busy right now, there's a lot of projects, and the fire department is really backed up, and it takes them 4 months to review and approve plans. So if we want to be assured of starting at the end of April, we need to get those plans in at the beginning of January. And we have a building team, again, that same committee that I'm the chair of. We've got day school representatives on there and church members on there, so that committee will continue to meet and discuss the drawings as we're moving forward. And the LCC's liaisons to that committee and to the school board will continue to report to council and keep council apprised of kind of the progress and what's happening with the project. Again, we've got this informational meeting, next one will be on September 30th, and then the congregation vote is on October 7th, and the vote is to approve the refurbishment of the preschool classrooms and youth center refurbishments as set forth in this slide presentation. And by October 7th, Church Council will have decided whether it's in the choir room or on the second floor of the Braid building, so that when the vote is taken, everybody knows where the youth center would be located. I've gone through a lot of information. I've gone through it, I think, semi-quickly. I've tried to keep it short. I open the floor up for questions. Yes?
Two questions. One's on this gate access, because I work in the kitchen a lot. What kind of gate are you talking about back there?
Fingerprint, if your fingerprint's approved, no, we're talking about gates that will slide open and shut and be able to be wide open, so.
So we can drive in?
I don't know about that. You may have to, you can drive into the gate that's at the courtyard, but you may have to walk from here, where is it? From here to here.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I'm almost 80, and the girls that work in the kitchen are the same age as me, a little older, and that is not a good thing for us to have to, because we have gobs of groceries and things that we have to carry in every week. I don't know about your maintenance people. They store stuff back there. Why can't you put a gate that we can slide and pull our cars in to unload and then pull them back out and park? We wouldn't park in there, but for loading and unloading, and when we're done at night, we have the same problem. We have to pull all this stuff out that we have to load into our cars.
Well, I mean, we'll take a look at that, depends on what the final plans are for the gates, and we'll take that into account when we're designing that. It may be a sidewalk, we may have to arrange for people to be there to kind of help load and unload, but I think it's something that can be addressed. Again, our main concern is security, but it's something obviously that we need to take into account.
Well, it's not just the dinners, it's also the memorial lunches and things that we do. It's a lot of pulling in and out of
No, it's a very good point, and we need to take a look at that.
So please, I appreciate your taking that into consideration.
Oh, absolutely.
The second point is, I personally don't think that you need to move the cry room. If you put the youth in the music center, why couldn't the music director have an office upstairs on the second floor? The cry room is a nice, quiet, subdued place, and if you put that in the nursery, you're getting rid of that. Now, I know there's been some complaints that they can't hear the sermon and so forth, but that to me is an easy fix, that they could pipe in the service in that area.
Yes, that's,
You know,
yeah. Please, please email us. You know, I'll certainly put this and add it to our notes. I have a running log of people I've talked to, pastors talked to, councils talked to. We'll add that, and we will meet and talk about all these.
but that gate business, I know there's gates that, and fences, stuff that's on wheels that you can put over to pull in and then leave, so.
A vehicular gate, I think is what you're, yeah.
I have a question. So I see the gate going from the one, by the playground. Is there gonna be another gate on that first entryway? Cause then the, playground is still
I'm gonna
technically
just gonna-
exposed.
There we go.
I'm not sure which gate are you referring to?
Here, when I just come here. Might be easier. So what is this gonna be for security? Cause there's not gonna be a gate here, correct?
No, there's the existing 6-foot fence.
Okay, so,
That's a
but
full-
here a vehicle comes in and then you're exposed here on the playground, right?
Well, yes. Mhm.
I mean, so that's just, you're keeping them from getting in, right, to the campus, but then you got a whole bunch of kids playing here that are totally exposed. That's my only question on that.
Well, I mean.
I know it
unless
can't be, like,
unless-
perfect, but-
Unless we enclose the playground.
Right.
But again, the security company said, actually, they said, you don't want that open, we want it screened, if we can get it screened so that people can't look in.
Okay.
So we're looking at that, to take that step also, and that was one of the recommendations of the security company. To put like a screening on it, and normally you'd think you'd want it open to see the kids playing, no. You want a kind of a gate that has a screen that blocks off so they can't see who's in there and stuff. So that's one step we're looking at taking for that.
So it's gonna go to a 6-foot fence, you said, there.
I believe that's what it is.
Believe it or
Well,
not, it is a 6-foot fence. It's just over the years, all of the mulch and sand that we
Oh,
have had
really?
There's
to.
2 feet of
So like, right
mulch.
now you can easily.
Literally
Okay.
2 feet of mulch.
Okay.
It'll be 6 feet again.
Once we dredge the
Yes,
playground.
pretty much.
Parking lot, yeah.
I know, that's kind of crazy,
Too
but.
bad you presumably be able to step over the fence.
Yes.
Chris Daly, those, slide 2, bullet 1.
Testing my.
There we go.
Mhm.
I'm trying to get to this, where it is written in code or NFPA, that building is no longer be able to be occupied by, whatever age kids.
I'm trying to understand what difference does it make?
It makes a huge difference because it's the purpose and need of the project.
No, the purpose and the need is to refurbish the entire preschool. It's not just that one little issue.
I understand.
It's
Rob,
getting- it's what it is, it's
Bullet
getting-
number 1,
What it is
Bullet
getting.
number 1 on purpose
excuse me,
and need.
Excuse me. What it is, the purpose and need is to refurbish the entire campus, okay? It's not just that second floor. But if you want a code section,
Yeah.
look at life and safety section.
I know
101,
101, yes.
chapter 15.
Okay, it's not in NFPA 101. So I would recommend taking that bullet off and changing your purpose and need to be only for refurbishment.
It is in there.
It is in there, Chris. It's in,
Just send it to me.
okay.
Well, you can look it up.
Yeah, it's in.
You can look it up. We've given you the section.
Yeah, code
We've given the
101, chapter
code.
15.
You can look at
I
it.
read it, and maybe I'm interpreting it differently.
Chapter
I didn't
15,
see a
section
single
4
thing
to
that covered
1.
an age of child.
Oh,
Well, then,
mhm.
you need to reread it.
Yeah, it talks about preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade students.
So it's just,
Just send it.
we're not gonna spend the
I don't
time,
wanna ask the
you can
question.
spend the time. So,
And it has to do with what level floor they're on for egress.
Somebody paid for NFPA, right?
I will.
Has
I
there
don't
been
think you
a meeting
understand.
with the fire chief? What's,
look at the code section.
So if the youth center went upstairs though,
I will-
would little ones not be able to be up there then technically? Is that
For a
correct?
preschool.
So if.
But
the youth
that's
event
if we
for toddlers, they
discontinue
could
the
have
use
up
of
there,
it.
correct?
We're grandfathered in right now.
For the school.
If
For the school.
For the
But
school.
I
not the
don't know
church.
what the, I don't know what the.
But yeah, the use, I mean, my
Church.
understanding is the use would change at that point,
When
right?
it's
It
a
wouldn't be
church.
preschool building, it wouldn't be preschool rooms anymore. And with that change of use, I think you lose the grandfather.
We would lose it as a school.
You
Now,
would
whether
lose it,
the
but would the
church could
church
use
be
it,
able to utilize
I don't
it
know
for
that
little
answer.
ones?
I don't know that answer.
Okay, alright.
Yeah.
Because
That-
that
that's
would
a
be
very valid question.
That's a really valid question, because, I mean, then, if the little ones can't go up the stairs, then that would make no sense to do the youth center on the second floor.
Well, the youth could go up there, but toddlers, you couldn't have their
Well, right, but
nursery up
toddlers-
You're having
there.
a
No, no,
sip
no,
and
no, no,
swing
but
event
we
or
do-
something.
We do events for little ones too,
Mhm.
so it's actually, that would limit us quite a bit, because we do have a lot of little ones who are coming up, and I do obviously do the little one events, so I just wanna know if I can use it.
Yeah, I think the church, because it's a church, there might be some kind of a different code. I don't know. What I know is about the school.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
should look into that, it was on the church
It
end.
seems the question is, at what point does the grandfathering, you know, when you change, how does you trigger a change in the grandfathering? Right now, we're fine, because it's grandfathered, that's why it's still being used, but at some point, if you're changing, you know, the use of it in the eyes of
If we,
the regulators, then the grandfathering may cease. Again, that's the thing we need to find out is how does the grandfathering fare in all of this? Because it might just pass on through. Because I know what the architects told us early on is, if you build something new, absolutely, you cannot have anyone under 7 years old going upstairs. But this is this is grandfathered, but, you know, how durable is this grandfathering, I think is what
yeah,
we'd like to know.
and that, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I know it's a problem to have the little ones up there. I just did it for a week Bible school, and we had rain and water and stuff, and for those little ones, I was teaching first grade, kids going into first grade. And it was very, you were on edge, them going up and down in those steps.
The stairs.
It's kind of dangerous. And then you also have, when you say youth upstairs, youth play pranks and get a little wild sometimes. That's a little dangerous to put them upstairs too, you know.
They're worse than the
So
toddlers.
to me, it would be better to make that offices and storage and whatever type thing up there.
Yeah,
That's my opinion.
I think when you get into a public use in that space, you have to make it ADA accessible, so the church would be more limited in what it could do out there.
I would like the church end to really look at that hard and making a final decision. Because if all youth cannot use it, then that isn't a continuing issue.
Yeah, because we have to look, I mean, a lot of people think when we say youth, that we're only talking high schoolers and or middle schoolers. But our quote-unquote youth programming is multi-age. It's everything from the toddlers clear on up through. And, you know, I mean, I think that's just something we have to understand, that when we're designing youth space, it really has to be more flexible than your old school youth room, you know, which was in the basement of the church and had a big pool table in the center of it. I mean, it's just, we look at it a little bit differently today when we think about youth and families, so that's a great point, Tina, I'm glad you brought it up.
How much do we use the choir room now? I mean, how essential is it? Maybe that's the way I should ask it. I mean, I'm not in the music program, so I don't know.
Well, you're sitting next to Margie there, who relates to that team.
The music department right now is, in a state of growth. And hopefully, you know, it will come up from Ginny, but that is an essential part. Based on my experience of many years of music, no. That space can definitely be utilized into a youth center, as we've seen on another slide in option presentation.
Kristen can probably speak to that. She
Mhm.
had 48 youth in there, the last lock-in that we did last weekend.
Friday.
you know, we were concerned about the size and the square footage, and would it work for a team that's gonna grow, or a youth group that's gonna grow?
I don't know that I would have believed that could happen had I not done that. And most of them were in there at the time. Did you guys feel cramped when you were in there?
Yes.
Yes, you told me
It
that.
got hot.
It got
We were all
hot
trying to
because
squeeze onto the, like,
But the
that's
air
the
wasn't
benches.
on.
We're all able to
And the
fit
air
inside
conditioning
the-
wasn't
The
turned
air
on,
wasn't
guys.
Oh, they are.
That's just sitting down. We're
Well,
able to stand.
Yeah, the reality is
I
that.
have, 2 questions. First, isn't the choir room also used for Family Promise?
It is, and so when the youth, if you guys decide to get that space as your space, that would be something that you as a group need to talk about. I mean, how do we share space on this campus, and how do we reach, how do we continue our ministries just as we do? You know, I'll mention that the current Family Promise Day Center was the youth room for that church on 22nd. The name is escaping me. And they donated that
Yep.
space
Central.
because they were really felt strongly about that program. So that's something for you to think about.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and, so, said, second graders, like, school can't be, like, on the 7th floor. Are you gonna do, like, that across the street, too?
Nope, just preschoolers.
Okay. She was reading it, says first, second graders.
Okay, we got a bunch of questions, and I saw David first.
Actually, as to the Family Promise, we also use a cry room this week.
We
when
do.
have multiple
We
families.
do,
Mhm.
yeah. We also use Kristen Hitchcock's office. We use a lot. I mean, this
We use
campus
Prayer
is.
Chapel, we use-
It's all used,
Right.
So
right?
we can-
And so when we talk about space, whose
Yeah,
space
anywhere.
is whose, we
Yeah.
can't, you know, decide, you know, this square footage is for this program, you know, it's all used for all.
We've even
programming.
used this room.
I'm sure.
We've used this room one time when we had a particularly large family that did not have the normal number of family members. So they had like 6 family members, so we had to put them in here. Because there were just there was no place else to put 6 beds, so yeah, we use the whole campus at different times. So the idea is we want flexibility built into whatever we do.
And that would be the same with the music department as well, because it is only used for rehearsal space, one night a week. Maybe something else if there's other options. But with that being said, the way it's configured right now, it is going to, you know, hopefully it would be, change that reconfiguration so that it would make it more agreeable to the youth. But the thing is, as Pastor said, is to be able to have the flexibility to move and to have movement of different ministries, because not everybody is here at the same time. So it's just coordination of scheduling, and it's having that flexibility, and it's opening up our mind to what are we about with ministries, and how are we gonna move and fit everybody. So with that being said, share the space.
Nate,
I was just wondering, like, if the youth center was in the choir room, and then the second floor would be like multi-purpose room, would there be any way, like, Family Promise could then, like, use that space in those meetings?
we'd have a security issue with that, right? So we let them in with one key here on our campus, a master key, and that would be a separate space.
And then my other question, would there be any way to put a window in the choir room?
There is a way to do you know, there's that exterior door there, a window in there, in that door.
Put a window in the door.
And then Kristen, and the architect and Rob and all of us are thinking light coming in from the entryway doors, you know, where it's a drywall wall now, that could be maybe a bank of windows to let more light in. But those are all details that we are not, you know, nothing's
Right,
set in
when,
stone
when
yet.
the time comes to do that renovation and reconfiguration, I think a lot of these things will be taken into consideration. But we don't have the exact answers right at this particular moment.
Arthur?
You said that you were 60 to 70% confident of financing.
Mhm.
Did I understand that right?
Yes.
For the $1.3 million cost, fundraising and bank loan?
Mhm.
Do you propose to have the 1.3 million either raised by fundraising and by the bank loan prior to submission of the plans to the city of St. Petersburg? Or when do you anticipate having that? Because obviously, if you can't raise the money, the project dies,
That would be ideal, I would love that. Knowing fundraising as I do, I doubt that will happen. So we'll have to take the risk and start going through it without knowing we have complete financing. That's not ideal, but fundraising can take time. We're behind the 8 ball on fundraising. Ideally, we would have started this a year ago, we would have had this project laid out, go on and meeting with people and say, here's what we're going to do, isn't this wonderful? Here's what we can do, and here's what we need to do. Can you contribute money? Between now and January, that's going to be an extremely expedited fundraising. Part of it is how much can we fundraise? And as I said, it's a very difficult equation.
but on the other side of the coin is, if you start construction.
Well, we're
in
not going to
April-
start, we will not start construction unless we know we have the funds to do it.
Okay,
That's not a,
okay.
we need to know, when we pull the trigger, we need to know we've got enough funds to complete construction. So,
In regards to the gate, how substantial are these going to be, and is there any way to see some sort of rendering of what they'll actually look like? Because there's a large variance of what it could be between the fence to basically like a 3-foot wall that moves, and everywhere in between.
we're gonna make it as safe as possible. We haven't gotten, as I said, we're still at a somewhat conceptual level yet. We've not gotten into the fine details of that. But again, that's something we'll be taking into account, the CIS recommendations and what gates and what the cost are. Part of it is cost also. So we don't have that specification yet, but, you know. And again, a gate is not necessarily going to stop somebody, it's just going to slow them down. It's just
No,
not
I'm
going
just
to slow
thinking
them down.
aesthetically, if somebody comes like on a weekday to come to church and their first time driving by, like, oh, I'll stop by, what's it going to look like?
Yeah,
as far
we're
as
gonna-
that? We don't want it to look like,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
prison.
Yeah.
Because that won't encourage new membership by any sense.
You don't think the barbed wire on top would work?
Few crow's nests.
Sniper nests.
Any other questions? Yes.
This is wholly, this project is wholly developed by the school board. Until I can get an answer to where that code is, I'm gonna have a hard time supporting this.
Okay, did you hear at the beginning when we said we had a joint committee of church? This is a joint project of the church and the
I
school.
just can't get past the
So-
purpose of need until I see it.
Okay, now, do you realize we have preschool classrooms that are severely in
I
need of
understand, I
renovation?
understand.
And that's why we're doing
If that's not the
this.
purpose of need, it needs to be taken out of the purpose of need.
I don't
If
understand.
meeting
Do
a
you-
fire code is not part of the purpose of need, it should be taken out.
If we move out of the upstairs, we will not be able to, if we take 3-year-olds out of the upstairs, we cannot refurbish it and put the 3-year-olds back
I've heard that,
there.
and I need it, what
Well, then I'd suggest that
specifically.
you research, we've
No,
given you the
this is-
code
This is your
section.
project, Rob, I
Yeah.
need to see it.
It's a joint project of the church and the school, it's not nearly my project.
I wish I
So-
had the time to do the consulting for you, I don't.
Well, thank you, we have done consulting with experts, the architects.
Architects are not experts on fire code.
Yeah, I mean, you've.
Get me a meeting minutes from the fire marshal.
Let me read the-
Yeah, I mean, this has been a hot topic for a long time, so I think it needs.
Holly, go ahead and read the email.
Okay,
Maybe that'll satisfy him.
Okay, so the fire department refers to the Life Safety Code 101, Chapter 15, for existing educational occupancies. Under the number 15.2.1.2, quote, "Rooms normally occupied by preschool, kindergarten, or first grade students shall be located on a level of exit discharge, unless otherwise permitted by 15.2.1.4. Under 15.2.1.4, rooms or areas located on floor levels other than as specified in 15.2.1.2 and .3 shall be permitted to be used where provided with independent means of egress, dedicated for the use by the preschool, kindergarten, and first grade students." If you redo your building, in essence, you would need an exit for each preschool classroom. Independent means of egress.
Who wrote that?
That's all I've been asking for.
Okay, well, there you go.
That's it.
Okay. Good deal. You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I got a couple. And I can't comment on the NFPA. I used to own a set of 101 and all that.
I
I
don't
threw away
have
20 years ago, so I haven't looked at that part. And to me, it always comes down to what the fire marshal says okay to and what they say yes.
There's a lot of that.
But I was on the building committee when we bought this building, when we redid this building, when we built the current sanctuary. And we did a very good site plan beforehand, and Milt's brother-in-law was the architect that put it all together, as I recall, right? And we came up with all these things, and a real big, important part of the puzzle was the choir room, because we did all these meetings, and that was very, very big to this church at that time. So I have a real hard time to seeing the church give up that, or control that, because I personally hope we redevelop a very good music program at some point in the future. So that to me is a real problem. My other thought is, and Holly will appreciate that, for the first time in 5 or 6 years, I'm kind of glad Lauren's not here, because he always talked about the tail wagging the dog when he referred to the day school. So for that reason, I'm kind of glad they're not here. That's been the first time I've been glad of that.
I can respect where you're coming from with those concerns that you have about the music configuration of the music room, as we can term it. But in reality, most choirs do practice in the sanctuary, and they can divide. There's lots of ways we can go into it. I don't want to get into the weeds with it, but to be able to utilize the space in another direction just seems far more economical and more ministerial, because it can still be used then as a music room too. I mean, there's multi-purpose ways to be able to negotiate it, so.
And I realize things change over a period of time, and
That's
maybe
right.
that's not a hot button for the church.
I would
Now,
love to
the
have
way
a
it
30-member
used to be,
choir here.
Just because we don't have a big music program right now.
Correct.
I certainly hope we, at some time, build back up to the point that we do have.
You're absolutely right, and I would love to be a part of that as we go forward, and I'll do and help Ginny as much as I can with that.
Arthur?
But there is another hot button issue here. If you have the choir rehearse in the sanctuary, you have a group of people that come in and really need some silence so they can do some prayer and meditation, like all other churches do. And when you have people rehearsing up there, you get other people drinking coffee and talking, passing notes, playing with their cell phones, and it destroys. If you take away the choir room, you're going to disrespect a whole group of people that come to worship, and they want to prepare for worship, and I think that's a real concern. My spouse is just, well, she's one of the people that really get concerned, because she can't pray, she can't meditate, she can't do anything, because the people up there are rehearsing, or talking, or doing whatever they're doing in the sanctuary, instead of the choir room, or somewhere else. And if we're just going to get rid of the choir room, and so everybody can rehearse in the, then tell us when to come to church. I mean, do we come at 9:45, or 10 o'clock, or do we just cruise in for the communion and then go home? I mean, it just is terribly unfair to think about taking the choir room away and making everybody rehearse in front of the sanctuary because it just opens up people to drink coffee. We now have about 15 to 20 people bring coffee cups in and drink coffee in the service and use their cell phones and talk and do vacations and catch up with all kinds of stuff because they haven't seen somebody for 2 days. And I think it's a real serious problem. I think it's a real serious problem.
John?
Is it my understanding that the LCC Day School Board doesn't really have a dog in the fight as to which option is picked? I mean,
Yeah,
is the board happy with either option? They
As I
don't-
said, we're neutral on this.
So
Whatever
this is
whatever
really more of a
works for the church
issue
best.
As to where the choir room goes or the, okay.
Correct.
I just wanted to make that distinction.
Right.
The board
Yeah.
is happy to go either way as long as something gets done to the preschool. Okay, that was all.
Isn't there the chapel that you could, I don't know.
We can rehearse in that room. It can be a like, the children can have it as a youth room, and then on Sunday mornings, it can be used as a rehearsal room because the youth aren't there. So again, it's a,
Makes the space flexible when you're designing
Exactly.
the space, you could do it that way.
exactly. But that will be up to the new choir director.
And Kristen, if I could, that tied in one of the other points, the chapel that's now right opposite the sanctuary. You mentioned something about that becoming, what?
No, not changing at all, just available for a mother if she needed, you know, if the cry space goes away and we're changing babies someplace else, the nursery, the restroom, whatever, and you still have a need to take your baby out, but you don't want to go to the nursery, right? So a box of soft toys or something in there.
When all this was being built and developed in the late 89s and 90 and then occupied in 91, we got a special gift of $50,000 plus in those days' monies, which now would be probably $150,000 plus, specifically to add on that chapel that's out there. It wasn't in the original plans. But Pastor Bergamo thought it'd be a good thing to have, and he cultivated and received a special gift for it to be a chapel, so I would
Yeah,
hate for it to become a.
It won't become anything else but a chapel. But the
Well, when
dual
you're talking
purpose.
about a cry room or a changing room.
No.
And again, if
No.
people wanna come in and have prayer, that's been a good place for that, so I would hate to see anything diminish that.
Yes, I would agree. Go ahead.
The other thing, thinking about like a cry room, is a lot of times mothers may be feeding a newborn, and that is right out front and center. And I know there are people that sometimes ushers walking through, and that kind of makes it a little bit more not as secluded as it should be.
Right.
So I think that that room would not purpose well for that particular need, because
Sure.
if a
Yep.
mother has a newborn and is breastfeeding,
Yeah.
it's very open, and you can say do not disturb, but someone's like, oh, this is the chapel. So I think there needs to be a
Sure.
designated space really just for.
Yeah, the mothers I've
people
talked
as it is.
to, I've done a lot of outreach the last 3 days, and, you know, the people who do use that cry room, your wife included, like the idea of a separate space. It's just that, you know, everyone I talk to had the same complaint, they can't hear or see the service, and that's an easy fix. And we can.
Pastor just needs to talk about it.
And so none of this is set in stone. When you see this, you know, we're gonna do this and this and this, you know, the council is still meeting, we are still deliberating. We do want your input, you know, please, reach out. Okay?
Anything else? Okay. Again, one thing I want to emphasize, this is a joint project of the church and the school. It's been developed with many meetings with the architects, with representation by both the school and the church there from day one. So I do want to emphasize that this isn't the school saying, here, do this. This was, from day one, a joint project, meeting with the architects, coming up with a plan that everybody said, yes, this makes sense, before this whole presentation was given. So I just want to clarify that, and we've tried to be very transparent, and I think we have been. So,
Rob,
thank you all.
Who else serving on this joint committee?
It's myself, Mike Hughes, David Bias, parent Joy Douglas, who's an architect, who's a member of the board.
Kristen Hitchcock.
Kristen Hitchcock, Pastor Will has been on it. I think that's basically it. And then the architects have been at the meetings. and obviously Holly also.
I love a meeting.
Okay, well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Madam.
Anyone who would like to, there is you can just stay in your chair. Our Bible study is starting in 5 minutes. Just stay right where you are. I got the Bible study books right here.
They show the gate that they have at Dixie.